One of them wanted to be the security guy. He claimed he was a security guy.
Welcome to a crisis on Security Guy Radio. But we're going to solve that today. Ms. Charisse, Cybergirl, welcome. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you, Chuck, for having me back.
Thanks for Skyping in from Houston. We missed you last week. But that's okay because you have some unbelievably disturbing news. Once again, as you always do, give us your cyber update this week.
You know, the cybercrime world, it never sleeps. Literally, it does not. So the latest what's been going on, and I don't know if you've heard, but reportedly the largest cyber heist occurred last week, and I'm talking about the Bangladesh Central Bank, that reportedly there was an attempt of $951 million that was trying to, be stolen through cyber criminals. Unfortunately, they only got away with 100 million.
Oh, only 100. Well, that's just chump change. Yeah.
Yeah, only 100 million, and somehow ended up in the Philippines and also Sri Lanka somehow. The other 870 million that was blocked was actually through 35 different transactions, and it was caught due to a misspelling of the message transaction messages.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Do you want to know what the word was that they misspelled?
I do, if you can say it on the air, absolutely.
Foundation.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's a tip-off on LinkedIn when some guy puts his name up there as General so-and-so and spells General wrong. It's probably a fake profile. I mean, this is the challenge they have, that the crooks don't speak English too well. Very interesting.
Exactly. Yes, this account was an account held at the U.S. Federal Reserve that is used for international settlements. And this is definitely being reported as the largest cyber heist in history.
Now, that's disturbing that it's our Federal Reserve. And by the way, the Federal Reserve is a private bank.
That's right.
Just so everybody knows. It's not a federal bank, which is a little more disturbing, but that's a different story. And the Philippines, people may not know, have a lot of terrorist activity down there. There's a high influence of Islamic terrorism on the outer islands mostly, right? So it all makes sense. This sounds like a terrorist thing to me. Any information on that? Or did we lose Charisse? Yeah. Oh, no, we lost Charisse. You got to close some of those browsers. I think that's what caused it last week. There she is. Charisse, are you back?
Okay. Am I back?
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, I think last week, Jarvis, it was too many browsers. So we got to kill some browsers. That's fine.
I thought it was a Chinese last week.
Well, we think it was the Chinese, actually. We were talking.
Sure it was.
You missed it last week. Charisse, we're talking about the bandwidth and how, they're watching bandwidth and the Chinese are hacking things. And the second we said China's hacking things, my guest went off the air.
Yeah.
From a Skype. Very
interesting.
Yeah,
so any information this is terrorist related? Anything they know about that?
On terrorist relations? Yes, actually. We have...
the bank heist, is that connected to any terrorist activity they know about?
Terrorist related? Not that I'm aware of any of the information coming out, although the lead, which was just disclosed today, the lead criminal cyber expert has just gone missing.
Oh, really?
Yes,
what he
has just gone missing, and he reportedly had identified 3 of the key users and identifications associated with this breach, and now all of a sudden he's gone missing.
Oh, boy. This is an episode of Bosch. It's pretty serious.
So this story is definitely developing.
And how long ago did this happen?
Last week, March 14th, I believe, is when it was disclosed.
I haven't seen too much in the news about that. No, have you?
No, Charisse gets the scoop on stuff. Wait
for it. Squirrel stuff?
You have to sift through. There's actually so much. It's kind of like what do you pick to report on? There's just so many events, cyber events going on at once. You have everything between the FBI and Apple judgment, and that's an ongoing saga, like a bad soap opera.
Right.
And then also to the actual real threats that are threatening our safety, our public safety, and specifically speaking of the Islamic State group threats that have recently been made to executives of Twitter and Facebook. Obviously, Mark Zuckerberg and what is his name? Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter. They're all receiving threats because they have obviously been very public about their support for removing any kind of terroristic activities, accounts associated with ISIS and any kind of terrorist type sympathizers. For example, Twitter has suspended over 125,000 accounts.
Wow.
Facebook is, the number is far-reaching as well. And they're receiving threats from these groups, not only to themselves, but to the employees of these companies.
All cyber threats, or is anything showing up in the mail, or what?
So far, cyber threats, direct verbal cyber threats written. But my question is, how do these companies protect and alert their employees? For example, if they know of an impending threat, how do they reach the masses? How do they connect people?
Well, I know how they take me off Facebook once in a while.
Oh,
I
surprise.
know how that works. No, I posted some pictures of people that had fish hooks, stuck in the wrong place. Nothing crazy. Oh, banned. That's
Really?
inappropriate. Yeah, that's too violent.
Sounds a bit fishy to me.
But let's show people's heads getting cut off, right? You see those all the time. That's not too bad. But I am glad to hear that they are doing this, Shrees, because there were a lot of these terrorist things on Facebook that were literally, here's the guy's head, off with your head, boom.
Did these groups take a shot at, a cyber attack at either Facebook or Twitter? I mean, did they go that route
Absolutely. So they're definitely, what they're doing is they're actively launching cyber attacks against accounts. They're hacking accounts. They're taking over accounts. And as quickly as they're doing that, Facebook and Twitter is responding by removing certain accounts. But my question is when these Islamic terrorist groups make these threats, not only to threatening the lives of the executives, but also threatening the lives of the employees at Facebook, how do we communicate crisis warnings so that we don't have a repeat of San Bernardino?
Well, it's not through Messenger.
No.
But it's funny. It's funny you should ask that question, Shrees, because as usual on Security Guy Radio, we just happen to have a solution. Because, as I said, this is a show about crisis. We have Mr. Jim Spicuzza of CrisisGo in studio today. He's our special guest, Skyping in from Missouri.
Yes.
Did I say that correctly, Missouri?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And
Perfect.
you're the CEO of CrisisGo, which is a crisis management system. I'm not going to call it an app, because if it's an app, it's on your phone. But this can be on your phone. It can be on your iPad. It can be on your computer. Anybody that has connectivity can function as a group and use this app in a crisis to gain information, disperse messages, simultaneously, like Sheree says. One of the problems with texting, although it's on a separate network, which is great, is that, maybe everybody doesn't have everybody else's text number. And when you're in a system like yours and you're part of that network, one message goes out to everybody. So I think this is a great idea, Jim. And I've gone over the data. And do we have a video? Did you bring a video we could play to kind of show an overview of it?
Yes, let's go through that video and talk about that problem.
Yeah, let's roll that, Jarvis. Let's push that button.
This is a clip of a police team going after a shooter in a school building. You can see them actively chasing the suspect. But this is what's happening during the 5 to 10 minutes prior to the responders arriving. Who is responsible for student safety during those first 10 minutes? In the past, just a few people needed to respond when the worst thing that could happen was someone getting punched in the face. But it's clear today that if we fail to have everyone trained to react immediately, it can lead to the loss of many lives. Safety has to change. Everyone in the organization needs to participate. It's time to give up the old ways of 3-ring binders, flip charts, and phone trees. School district staff need to have access to their emergency response plans right on their smartphones and pads, along with a communication system that helps them get through crisis situations. Every staff member needs to have the tools to ensure the safety of their students when the unthinkable happens. With the touch of a finger, teachers and staff can access a modern crisis toolkit that alerts, communicates, and provides coordination during a crisis. It is time to give up the old ways of safety training by sitting around a table or meeting in the gym. Staff can now train by practicing from their assigned work areas. This allows them to see the challenges in their environment and experience communicating during the crisis. Better practice makes better response. Everyone can now be a part of the solution. Parents can be notified immediately, and students and parents can provide tips and bullying information when they know about situations that might put children at risk of harm at school. All of this is available today and extremely affordable. So what are you waiting for? The choice is yours. Are you comfortable with the old way? If you would like more information on how to transform your district, contact us at CrisisGo or share this with others through Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Very nice. You should produce a Security Guy radio commercial for us, Jim. That was
Oh,
very
thank
good.
you.
Very
Thanks.
nice. Now,
Yes. So what we do is we help people get fast. You know, people say, what do you mean by that? Well, what we mean is by getting faster to communicate, faster to let people know they're in harm's way with real alerting tools, faster to connect people with each other through messaging that's instant and real time, not sending forms back and forth, faster to reunify kids with their parents, and then really fast to call for personal help, like through panic buttons.
this is a good way to phrase it. It's an excellent way to phrase it. Now, security was always owned by whoever got designated that job, right? In the school, it was a guard, and maybe the crossing guard participated, and the cafeteria lady was standing around. So you're on the school security team, right? And that, by the way, that never worked in the first place, all right? It only worked because nothing happened, all right? Push comes to shove, if everything really goes down, then it was just every person for himself, and, you know, hopefully something would work out. And as we see in most school shootings, it doesn't work out very good. So this brings individual responsibility, which I'm a big proponent of, back to each person in the system, and allows that person to be empowered with knowledge and decision making in that space, in that time. Because the guard standing at the gate doesn't know what's going on in my classroom, and he can't make a decision for me. But that's the old model, right? So I'm all for this, and we'll talk about it later. But of course, you can apply this application to a business, to a stadium, other things. But we're going to focus on schools for most of the show, because I think that's really what we have the most experience in, and people know that that's a problem. So how did you come up with this idea? It seems like such a logical no-brainer, but good ideas are usually come from some kind of crisis in the first place, right?
Right. 2013, we had a school district in the Chicago area come to us and say they needed to move their emergency plans and 3-ring binders. I'm sorry, their flip charts and 3-ring binders to their mobile devices. So they actually had their plan with them at the time of a crisis. Just made great sense, right? And we were just coming off of the Sandy Hook incident, where we had this situation where we knew that a few people were really great at emergency response, but the rest of the staff was not. And so as a few people got injured and hurt very early in the incident, what happened is that we lost the continuity and the coordination of the response. So from that, we learned that we had to have better communication, and more people had to be empowered to be safety leaders rather than a few, just like you mentioned, Chuck.
Yeah, it's got to be individual. We talked about this in a show we did earlier today, Eve and I, and Jarvis, that all security is personal, right? You have to be able to take care of yourself in the end. And if you're waiting for the police to get there for 10 minutes, it's not going to happen, right? You can't wait for that to happen. So tell us how this works, just kind of an overview. I'm not going to call it a mobile app like I said in the beginning, because you can use it on an iPad, you can use it on your desktop, any connectivity. You can be into the system work. So just kind of give us a overview of some of the features.
All right. So, as we go through the situation, we think about the start to the end. So a staff member sees something and she feels or he feels uncomfortable. Maybe somebody walking around in a parking lot. We tell them to use our 2-way real-time communication tool. It's a multimedia tool, voice, video, text, voice to text, and send a message to the right people within the organization. Because we help them build their groups, the right people are the recipients, maybe the principal, the assistant principal, the safety response officer, whoever they designate will get that message delivered to their device, and so they can respond. Maybe it's nothing, but it could be something very serious. And we always say, if you see something, say something.
Right.
But we don't ever say how.
That's a good point.
Now we tell them how to say something, use the tool. So the security guy maybe goes to the door and sees that the person might have a weapon. He uses a different tool, our alert tool.
Now, when you say tools, we're going to say, to make it simple, he pushes a different button maybe. Good way to
Pushes
say
a different button.
Okay, good.
Different button on the app or on the computer, whatever he's using.
And does that send off like a fixed message, or does he have to speak into it?
No, it actually, because we work with them to define their crisis types, we already have them pre-programmed in. And so it's going to say maybe active shooter. It's going to say shelter in place. It might say severe weather warning. Whatever they pick from that list, it will pop up. They can add additional information, but the main thing is it'll set off a siren. And that siren will go off on all the devices and give them that very, very fast alert message. And even if their law enforcement and fire are included, it will also go to their offices, their dispatch, their cars, and it'll let them know at the same time.
So
that all the staff
if the local PD participates, they get the alert at dispatch. Maybe it's on the, what we call out here, a lead officer, who's like in charge of that district. Maybe it goes off on his mobile phone, and he's going to get that too. That's very good.
I have a question, actually. So let's say we're dealing with a shooting and somebody's hiding because, the guy is very close. What happens if this alarm goes off? Is there a way that I could make it, vibrate instead of making a loud sound so I can hide? Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we started, we just had the alarm go off until you turned it off. Mm-hmm. And that's great because, a lot of people, if they don't hear it and they get into a room, then they start to hear it, it's good. But particularly in an active shooter situation, after so many seconds, you don't want anybody to get any noise on their device. So we actually turn it off after 20 seconds on an active shooter, where we might let it ring on a bus accident or something else, a medical emergency, because we don't care. You don't have to worry about somebody having a gun and entering into that space. So the tools are getting smart enough now that we can say, hey, if it's an active shooter, we're going to silence all, not only the alarms, but any kind of messaging notice. We're going to silence it during that entire event until we release that event. Great question.
Now, it's interesting this comes out of Chicago because there's a high school called Vernon Hills High School out there in, Vernon Hills.
Vernon Hill, yeah,
I guess
that
that's the
would
name.
make sense, Sorry.
Anyway, so it's one of these blue ribbon schools, smart kids and on the dean's, president's list and all this kind of thing. Now, schools like that tend to be, so smart that they think they're smarter than everybody else. And I went out there years ago and said, hey, I do active shooter training, and here's my brochure. What do you think? Well, not too long ago, I think it's within the last couple of months, they had an incident at the school where they went into lockdown. And people were sitting in closets under desks in a closed room because the alarm went off, but that's all that happened. And no one was notified, I think, for up to 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And everybody's going, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know. What do you do, right? And I keep thinking, why don't they have, and this was before I actually met you, Jim. I kept thinking, we should have something like this. And then I found you. And I think it's ironic it comes out of Chicago where you developed this, because this school, who has a budget, has the money, has the ability, has smart people in place, are still screwing around with, well, we have a lead officer and he's going to tell you what to do.
But they didn't employ you, right?
They did not employ me. And I'm not saying they don't employ me, but they could employ somebody, right? So they had the PD come in and train them on active shooting. Not that the PD knows anything about that, right? And I was very disappointed. Now, I'm calling them out on the show because I know they listen. Some teachers listen. You ought to go to your teacher and say, oh, we need CrisisGo. We need something besides your piece of junk alarm that goes off and makes us all hide under the desk, and now we don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
and literally, until everybody said all clear, no one had any idea if there was a shooter, if it was a nuclear bomb. Nobody knew what was going on. And that in itself, Jim, could be more dangerous, by the way, right, a false alarm, than a shooter.
Well, the other thing they do is they treat it as a fire evacuation.
Exactly.
So everybody goes out in the car park and stands there and waits for the active shooter.
Right. Now, in this case, they ironically didn't. They sheltered in place and stayed. But, you're sitting there for 20 minutes, half hour. What if you're somebody that has a medical issue or some kind of problem, or some guy goes in a panic and has a heart attack? People have had heart attacks, So I think this is really very well thought out. It's brilliant. Is it easy to use? Now, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I have a ton of apps on my little phone here, and I can't keep track of all of them. I'm a high-end user, right? So tell me how this is sustainable. Tell me how you get people to buy into it. Tell me how people say, that is a value to me. I am going to pay attention. I'm going to use it. Because, sometimes once you download WhatsApp or Tinder or whatever it is, you go, I'm done with that today. I'm bored with that. I'm on to the next thing. So tell me how you handle that part of it.
Well, I think you really hit it right on the head. Safety is all about the three things, speed, it's all about the ability to communicate, and also practice. And so instead of just giving people a tool and saying, hey, use this on the time of an emergency, CrisisGo has a lot of things that we encourage people to do all the time.
Oh,
One of the things is that we have like a checklist that takes you through all your standard protocols. And as you tap on each one of those steps, what ends up happening is we date and timestamp it. So whether you're visualizing that or actually going through a drill, we're capturing that data. If you can't do a step, you can actually respond to it by clicking on the comments and saying, hey, it said for me to lock the door, but there's no lock on this door. So we can really validate the plan. And as they submit that, what do we have? That's that accountability, Chuck, you talked about. Number one, I was trained, I learned the tool, I understand the content, and now I know what to do every time. And the teachers, they tell us that they love it because they feel like now they have some control.
so what you just described might be a guard tour to check fire extinguishers, right? But you can set this up so the teacher, what their duty is every day is to, I don't know, make sure we got enough porta potties for an emergency, and we check the lock on the door. And so their classroom becomes a checklist for them. And they're participating instead of making security do it. Is that the idea?
Yeah, both.
Okay,
So
both. All right.
both for daily use and then also for every crisis type. If I'm sheltering in place, my steps are different as a teacher.
Right.
They're really different if I'm sheltering in place and I'm the facilities person. So CrisisGo takes every role in your organization and delivers to that person their specific steps and only theirs so that they can execute them without any of the challenges of digging through the rest of the plan and having to try to coordinate all of that
Right.
too.
Which nobody sees. Nobody ever sees the plan. That's just-
Now I have a question in this whole process. Where does the alerting come in for the parents? And can the parents have the app and be alerted and notified in the event of a crisis or emergency?
Yeah, so if you think about it in two separate segments, you look at it in one segment, how does the staff and administration and police work together to solve the problem that they are faced with? That's one set of communication. The other is parents and students. And with CrisisGo, our communication platform is really a very large group messaging platform. He mentioned, Chuck mentioned WhatsApp or GroupMe, same kind of concept in which we can put 1 million members in a group and we can send them a message from app to app very, very quickly. Or if they don't have a smartphone, we can send an SMS message or an email to those people. But our goal is to get everybody to have the app because it's very, very fast then. Parents can download the app. Now, they can't participate in the response side of it, which is my plans, my maps, my emergency contact list for police and fire, but they can receive messages and they can also respond to us. But when they respond to only a few people within the organization, within their group, so kind of like a manager member type of group, this allows us to have control of the messaging, to respond to specific parents or to the entire group at one time. So unlike Facebook or Twitter, where everybody gets to comment, everybody sees everybody's thread, in CrisisGo, when a parent asks a question, only the administration of that group see that.
Well, that's important because that can bog down your communication.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the problems with Columbine, that there's two things. One, old response procedures were SWAT shows up, makes a command post, gets the coffee ready, we're going to do a plan, then we're going in, right? Now we train what you're talking about, speed, right? But even if the speed was in place at the time, the parents responding because kids were sending messages or calling people, it blocked traffic. And first responders couldn't get in that easily to the site to respond because of the parents showing up, right? So I think it's important that the parents aren't on the app, but that part, here's my question. I think you almost have to have a separate administrator to tell parents what not to do. You know, we're going to handle it. We're going to give you information, which you never got before, but please don't show up and try to rescue your kid. Now, by the way, I'm that guy, okay? I'm the ass parent that says, I don't give a crap what you say. I'm going in. But
I would be there in a hot second.
I'm trained to do it, right? I got my Roscoe, and I can, I don't care about bad guys and guns. It doesn't scare me. I may screw the situation up, right? But I personally trained my kids a different way to respond to things. So how do you handle that? It's almost a one-way communication. Is it robust enough to let parents know, okay, boom, we have a crisis, and by the way, go ahead and download parent protocol. It's all right here. Here's the basics you guys need to know as parents, and then administrator can get in there and answer questions. See what I'm saying?
Right. So I think you're right. Parents want to come and they want to help. But the challenge is exactly what you said. We don't want to bring them into danger. We might not have cleared the space. We might not have enough access for responders to come in. And so if we can earn their trust by telling them very, very quickly what's going on,
right?
If we can tell them where to go, not don't come here, but go to this location. We'll have somebody there meeting you. The kids will be on the way there very shortly. So if you come here, you'll miss them. Then we can start to direct that traffic. On top of that, if they use the app, they're going to be able to feel like they're really connected to that crisis because they won't see all of the other chatter. It becomes an official channel.
Right.
Where Facebook sometimes gets hijacked by the community and Twitter the same way, and it starts to go into whatever they want to talk about and question the protocols, etc.
So there's a lot of application. I guess that's the right word. There's a lot of processes on here, right? So you have, I'm going to call it a button. Tell me if it's not a button. Good. But you got comprehensive risk management, business continuity plans, which is a nice button, emergency response, two-way mass messaging we talked about, mass notifications, security and data protection, which I'm going to let Cerise comment on in a second, alerts, panics, two-way communication tips. I love the tip process where we're not in crisis, and to not get in a crisis, I'm going to report the guy sitting in his car over there looking at kids. I'm going to report things before it goes to a crisis, which is really good. Is it scalable? Can I add my own button? I mean, you have checklists in here, maps and documents, emergency contacts is great, rosters of students. Can I add and tell you, Jim, I got to have a button for the gym because the gym guys, they're kind of Neanderthals, and I got to have a button that says, calm down, don't go eat meat, everything's under control. Can we do that, or we're just kind of stuck to our standard buttons?
We have a set of emergency response protocol tools that we give them, and then we also have another set of tools that allows them to message smaller groups, panic, alert those groups, whether that's a bus route where maybe you want to tell parents, hey, we have a situation where the bus is running 25 minutes late. Everybody on bus route 67, you now can get that message from your transportation group. So we have great ways to manage smaller groups that need to have communication and coordination. And then many of the tools that you see in our system are actually integrated into the school network. So like our roster tool, where we take attendance of children, we actually pull that data every night from the student information system. So we have yesterday's roster on our device because that's the whole goal, right? What kids are missing, who's not accounted for.
Yep.
In a hard lockdown before, we didn't even take attendance until after we released them from their rooms. Could be 2 hours.
Yeah, that is critical. Now
we do it in the room.
That's called is it still called a GUI, graphic user interface? Is that how you grab the data?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Cerise, it's yours now. I want you to try and catch them on the security here because it's got to be secure. I can't be having a graphic user interface that is hackable, that is breachable, that some smart kid that's smarter than all of us, because they're out there, right, finds out how to hack into it like he hacked into the CIA director's computer one day. How do you handle that? And Cerise, I'll let you take that part. Hello?
Sure, and the questions around that is how do you protect the data? Is how the data in transit, the data at rest, the encryption aspect of it, access to it?
Yeah, great questions, and we're actually hosted on the Amazon cloud, and so east and west we're mirrored, and so we have that redundancy and that dependability that you can count on. We also because we have student data on our devices, we're constantly checked and audited by the states.
Oh, good point.
Because we're under that FERPA law, Family Protection Act, that requires that we take care of that student data, and only the right people can see student data based upon the permissioning within the organization. We also, as we've worked with the government, we have encryption of our video, because we're able to do live streaming video, kind of like a Periscope as well as a FaceTime type of piece on our app. And so we encrypt our video in transit as well as at rest, along with all of our messaging, because the government required that our messaging be encrypted both at rest and while it's being transmitted. So because safety is so important, particularly for the organizations that we deal with, we have many laws that we have to comply with just to meet those standards. We're now in 1,200 schools in 35 states, and we've been able to pass that degree of challenge by the organizations.
Listen,
and prove it.
if you can just fill out the form from the government, you've achieved a great deal.
That's
I'm
true.
very impressed by that, because you have so many feeds into this thing. That's quite a challenge to get all that data coming to one place.
And every state is probably different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least a little different. You're right. California, extremely challenging. So if you meet California
No way.
standards, really you do well across the country.
So, Charisse, my question on the security side of it is, I get we have to protect kids' data and so on, but do you see a risk internally on a program like this? And Jim, I'm going to ask you in a second if you have had that challenge, right? I mean, I don't see somebody from the outside being as interested in this, although that cyber attack you talked about on the power plant, right? I could see something like this being used to get into another system. Any issues you see there?
Absolutely. So, if you look back historically at the attacks done on school, it's usually a disgruntled kid that went to that school. So that kid would obviously, under this situation, have this app, know that the alarm has been sounded. How do you protect against that? Can you guard against that insider threat with that privileged information?
Right. So I think, that we assume that the problem that we have is already inside our buildings, because the child can get a gun inside the building if he wants to. We normally invite the parent in who's the problem, right? Because we want to talk to them about their child, about one of their kids. And so we go from the standpoint that we've already invited the problem inside of our building, and now we have to deal with it.
That's a good point.
Not so much breaking in and shooting down the doorway. And so when you take it from that standpoint and you start from that premise, the child can understand what's going on and that the alarms are going to go off. But the teachers have the protocol and get the specific message, whereas the child gets a different message from the app telling them what they want them to know. And so it might say hard lockdown, but it might not say active shooter.
Oh, okay.
It could be a completely different message, and we've had that happen where we've gone into hard lockdowns where kids had the gun in the building. We didn't want all the kids to know what was going on, and so we said, hey, we're moving into hard lockdown. They set off a hard lockdown, but did not go to an active shooter type of protocol to them, but told the teachers.
Now, why is that?
Messages were different.
Yeah.
But successful in delivering what they needed to.
So, Paul, if we have different messages, don't we have different outcomes for each group? I'm always a guy that says, let everybody know about it so we can bring individual resources to bear. In other words, if Eve is better capable to take care of her own problem and barricade in place and be safe, and she has the data, I don't have to worry about Eve. If I have a kid that says, I got this message, there's a lockdown, and he wanders out in the hallway to ask somebody about it, and it turns out it's an active shooter, we got a problem.
I think, but what Jim's saying is if you've got, I'm assuming, if you've got a student that's got this app, and you're sending a message out to everybody, then that student has got.
No, he's saying that the
same
student.
information.
No, the student could get a different message. It could be a lockdown.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if you,
but
if you've
not
got a
an
student,
active shooter. All he knows is he's locked down.
Yeah, but if you've got a student that is the active shooter, and he's got this app,
right,
then if you're giving the same information to everybody, right? So if you parcel it up a little bit, then he hasn't got all the information, right? That's what you're saying. Or
It's him as a
on the
user.
wrong
Well,
track?
I just think I don't know.
So, Chuck-
I guess it's individual school policy, but I'm all for everybody knowing everything
Yeah.
to protect themselves.
But again, you don't know who's got that information, because if the active shooter has got this app, then he's got all of the information. But if you're
well, that's
parceling
true.
it up,
That's true.
then at least you can, stop him from getting everything, right? Or
Right.
her.
I think though too, it's age dependent. When we think about K to 12, we think of the staff members as the people who are empowered to protect these kids. Once that kid gets to high school level, I think you're right. We could give him the real message and he could make maybe a better decision. But a young kid, in 7th grade or 6th grade, we really depend on that teacher to coordinate that response for that group of kids and to move them to safety, because they can better evaluate that situation than those kids can at that time.
Well, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. And by the way,
I agree with you.
and now the teacher has way better app information with your app than they've ever had. Instead of I'm going to go hide in the corner, right? What is it? We talked about today. Get under your desk, right?
Right.
Now they have some actual information they can do something with instead of just getting under your desk. So that makes sense to coordinate and tell the children what to do.
Jim, can you cut somebody off? I mean, going back to the possibility of an active shooter actually having the app.
Or several shooters to
Or
coordinate.
several shooters. I mean,
Right.
can you actually just cut somebody off so you know it's Joe Blow that is the shooter? Can you just go in immediately and just zap?
Yes.
You're not getting any information?
Yeah, we can remove them from any message channel at any time. And so actually from the app, the administrators of that group can remove those people. And we typically have 3 or 4 administrators for every group, because we know that some people are going to be gone,
Yeah.
or people are going to be out sick or at a meeting or unattentive.
Well,
And
by
so
the
we
way,
always have 3 or 4
the
people.
administrator that's sitting on the beach on vacation may be the better person to be the administrator. Because
Yeah,
they're not in the shooter.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, he's disconnected from it.
They can, that's
Yeah,
right, disconnected,
yeah.
and they can make unemotional decisions to try and make it a little better. So 1,200 schools, is that what you said?
Yes.
So can you discuss any shooters that were in the news that your app worked on, or if not a school, maybe a business or something?
We've not had a physical shooting. We've had many situations where we've had guns in the buildings, and so that is one in which they've moved into hard lockdown. And the one that I gave you was actually the child brought the gun to school. It wasn't intended to hurt anybody, but he was kicked out of his house. So in his bag he had everything that he owned. And one of those things was his gun and his ammunition.
How old was he?
He was a high school kid.
Okay.
And so he took that to school, and as he was rearranging everything in his pack in the bathroom, his gun fell out on the floor. The principal was in the stall next to him. So the kid packed it all up.
Good thing he was sitting down. It probably,
Yeah, he knew when it hit the ground that he was in trouble. He packed it up, put everything back in his backpack, ran back to his classroom. By the time the principal got out, he set off the siren and moved everybody into hard lockdown. The child actually knew it was him, and so he went ahead and separated his gun from his ammunition, put it in a different part of his room, and when they came and got him, he explained what had happened. But the key though was within 1 minute they were able to lock down that building.
yeah, that's amazing.
High school.
So today on our show, earlier, Jarvis and Eve were talking about scenarios, right?
Okay.
Do you guys think this has a deterrent effect? Let's say, you sometimes look a little criminal, I must say, Miss Eve. You get that look about you, right? So let's say you're mischievous and you say, I'm going to go over here to Notre Dame High School, but you find out it's got this CrisisGo system.
Yeah.
Is that going to make you think twice?
No.
Why not? Does a guard make you think twice?
No.
Right? 'Cause
Well,
a guard-
I think if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's just me and probably anybody else in this world that is trying.
Yeah, but
to
if
do
you're a
something.
student here, your chances of succeeding are really reduced with this kind of
I mean,
application.
here's my thing with this though. Like at the same time, if we're still on lockdown, everybody's still on lockdown. So unless they're actively moving away from the situation, I don't know how much. I mean, yes, you're going to know right away that something's going on. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it?
Well, for example, the principal's on the crapper and he sees the gun drop off. He could have activated the program right there from the stall, and the whole school is locked before the kid even got back to class.
Well, I think it does
He could have done
harden the
that.
target, doesn't it?
I think it does.
I think
I
it,
mean,
I think
makes
it could
it
help.
harder.
Yeah.
I think it could help time wise, and that's the benefit of this application. But at the same time, I think, well, if you, it's almost like you have more time. That's what I think, to save yourself.
Who has more time? Oh, yes. Yeah.
You have time to save
Time
yourself.
is compressed. It's faster when you have more time to do something, right?
Right, you have more time to do something, so that's very good.
So here's
to
what
be
I
able to
think.
be safe.
I think if every kid in every school and every teacher and principal and janitor and crossing guard at every school had a gun, there'd be no shootings in schools. Okay?
Okay.
That's not practical. I wouldn't advocate that, of course, right? But to me, something like this just makes it look like we're trying. And so many schools just don't try.
Yeah.
They just, like Vernon Hills, we're going to have a drill and we're going to march everybody out in the fire drill. And by the way, there hasn't been anybody killed in a fire in a school in 50 years. So what are we doing fire drills for? Why are we not doing more active shooter drills?
Yeah.
Because we know there's been 300 of those in the last 30 years or whatever it is, right?
That's because nobody wants to face it.
Well, but why don't you? It's so important. I don't know why it's any worse than a fire. I don't get it. Jim, let's talk about sales, okay? So is this a hard sell? 1,200 schools, it's admirable. It should be in 100,000 schools, right?
Yeah, it should be 100,000. It's a situation that it's a change in how people work, and when it's not like asking people to use a different tool to store a file on a computer. This is saying that at a time of a crisis where I normally ask you to do absolutely nothing but to sit down and to stay quiet, I'm now asking you to participate.
Okay.
And that change of culture takes time, and it takes trust. And so we've had to build trust with staff members, administrators, that they will get the type of outcome that they want to achieve. And that outcome is very much what you guys are talking about. Either fast to exit the building if they use run, hide, fight, or Alice, or fast to lock down, or fast to get to that shelter-in-place location in their building, or fast to hit that panic button and get somebody to come and help them. The change in culture, though, is what we hope we're spearheading. That people are going to say, instead of waiting for the police, which is so important that we get them on the way there.
Right.
Fast.
This helps, by the way, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even more so, that I take those 5 or 6 active steps that I can take as an individual to move as many people to safety, whether that's leaving the building or getting behind a locked door, as I can, because I'm responsible. I'm the first responder because I'm there right now. And that's what we're training people to do.
Jim, just step back a little bit. Is there I'm assuming there's a GPS sort of application on this?
Yes, there is.
Okay. But wait, so if there's a lockdown and you got a group of people in a classroom, etc., is there a way of doing like a roll call on this? Is there a way of counting how many people in that room?
Yes, we actually have
useful for law
this
enforcement?
roster part of our system that syncs with the student information system, allows us to take attendance.
Oh, take attendance. Good. So actively the system's
So
going to
you would know how many people in that room.
That's
I mean,
good.
that's worth a lot.
More
Jake-
importantly, we
Yeah.
know which kids are missing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you
So,
guys have
no-
access to cameras, James?
Say that again?
Do you have access to cameras like at the school?
We don't, just because there's so many protocols out there for the way that those camera systems render that video.
Yeah.
But what we can do is that we can give them the information of what kids are missing. We can also ask all the people within our organization, right? I've got two-way real-time messaging going on. Hey, I'm missing Johnny Smith. Any of you have him?
Okay.
And if they don't, we actually have all the kids' emergency contact information right on the device. Long hold on their name, and up will pop, their mother, father, aunt, uncle, whoever their emergency contacts are, and their phone number. I can make a call.
Now, you can, similar to Messenger, I assume you can open up the messaging part and take a video and send it to somebody to say, look, there's a picture of the bad guy. So that part of video works.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Voice, all those
That's pretty
multimedia
cool.
tools.
It's not
James-
streaming, though. I'm not streaming something live on the system. I'm just filming it and then sending it.
We have both.
Oh, good.
We have-
Okay.
We have a streaming tool that's like Periscope for one-to-many or a point-to-point like FaceTime. And then we also have a message type of video where we take a video and through our messaging channel, we send that to all the people that should get it within the messaging channel.
You know what I try to do every time somebody comes on my show? I try to pick it apart and say, what about?
I've
think,
noticed.
I can't think of another what about, right?
Well,
I
I've
don't
got
have another what about, but I have a question. I mean, this makes sense to me. It's preparing the individuals. What about preparing companies, enterprises? I see this being part of their crisis management readiness plan. I mean, one of the last organizations that I work for, we're still doing the old school meet at the exit sign outside the building, you know, the mustard spot in case of an emergency. Has this been adopted in corporate enterprises?
Yes, not intentionally, but by accident, we've had some media around our business in different cities and states, and we've received calls from businesses as well as other statewide organizations like offices of education or, in places where you might have 1,200 employees and maybe your emergency protocols are not even in place or not very strong, right? But you come out of San Bernardino and all of a sudden you've got 1,200 employees under your roof and you're asking, what would happen if somebody walked in one of our 50 doors that we have access wide open for people to walk into our buildings? What would we do? And so we've been helping organizations go through that process. Again, I don't care if they use Alice, a Run, Hide, Fight, whatever their protocol is, we can help them tell people quicker and faster what they need to do, and we can deliver their protocols to their mobile devices so people actually can start to take those steps and move to safety. We're also working with Major League Sports clubs right now.
I was just about to ask, yeah.
Yeah, because outside safety is just as important as internal. And the ability to coordinate, once you have real-time two-way communication and incident reporting, you now open up this ability to coordinate and orchestrate response that we've not had in the past. So imagine if you go into the ballpark and every usher has this, right? So from there, they can also do their guest services because they know where people should go to find the right food service items or which escalators are located in that hallway, etc. But then their emergency protocols are baked right into their everyday handbook that they're required to share with guests and to help move guests to safety as well as to provide that fantastic experience inside the club.
Now, I like the fact that, and Paul, you appreciate this, right? So we had a floor warden program at Fox, and
there was hell, by the way.
the idea was you get an orange hat and a fanny pack and a bottle of water, and
Yep.
you're in charge of all these 20 people here in your cubicle. And I'm like, really? That's going to work somehow? And it's not fast because we didn't have all these fancy highfalutin smartphones and things, right?
Well, the biggest problem is that they'd gone the next day.
Yeah, there's turnover in employees, right?
Yeah.
So what I like about this, Jim, is that you're not really coming in there and saying, CrisisGo is your plan. You have your own plan. Your plan is good for Fox. It's good for UBN Radio. It's good for Cyber Threat Be Gone. Whatever the business or school, we're going to help supplement that with a process to make your plan work. And I'm sure you have some protocols that are probably best practices, but I think that's an easier sell to a business. You're not going to come in and say, I want you to use Alice because Run, Hide, Fight stinks. Hey, I like Alice. It's my brother-in-law's company. I'm not going to tell you how to change it, right? So that's not the hard sell. You're just saying, listen, I'm going to make it faster. And I think that's a good business strategy.
Well, and I'm like you. We don't have a dog in that race, right? We don't really care. Whatever you want, and based upon your employees and the risk level and the skill level of your employees, if I got a bunch of people in wheelchairs, I have a situation that that I need to think differently
Right.
with this staff member group than I do if I have a bunch of 18 and 22-year-old kids. They can all flee pretty easily. But if I have a staff group that's not like that, I need to have different protocols in place. We don't really care, like you said, Chuck. We want to help you execute your plan fast. The only thing I know is if you don't practice being fast, you won't be.
No, that's true. It does
And-
take practice.
And then you'll be using text and you're trying to call people during a crisis. The phones are going to be busy. The texts are going to be going off. Everybody's going to be getting 1,000 messages. And you're not going to be successful. So
Jim-
we have
Jim-
to help you practice being fast.
You know, Jim, I was going to ask that. How do you actually train people on this? I mean, is there videos? You know, do you come out? Do you have mass training sessions? I mean, because it's, you know, some people can't operate
Well, part of it,
a
what he
smartphone.
Yeah, well, remember, part of what he said was, if this is your classroom, we're going to give you one of these buttons that says, here's your checklist for the day. And maybe every morning she comes in and checks off the fire extinguisher, checks off the food supplies.
But you can't just throw it out there. I mean,
No.
do you have a video or something
Well,
that people watch? Or
But
what?
using it, right, seems like people use it every day in some
You should
small way.
use
And
it.
then,
Yeah. But
Yeah.
initially, you got to be shown, right? Or so how do you do that?
Yeah, so we actually start out by training administrators. Once we train administrators, then we found out the first couple of years it pays for us to train the staff. So we get through a webinar or through being there in person, whatever they feel is best for their organization. We want to come in and we want to train your initial staff with our guy being in the room. He doesn't have to do it, but we want to be there to answer those initial questions and challenges that come from the staff. You know, how much data is this going to take on my phone if I use it outside? How much storage is it going to take? We want to answer those questions. We want confidence in those staff members. And then what we do is we start doing what we call light and medium engagements. And this is like a 5-minute practice. Once every 2 weeks, hey, it's severe weather type of the year. Send out a message through the app, severe weather practice, 9 a.m. Everybody logs into their app. They go through their severe weather checklist. Can I move my staff members to the inside of the building? Can I make sure that the outside doors are shut, that we're away from any windows? Check, 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 check. And I'm visualizing this from where I'm actually doing my work. So I'm really able to see how I'm going to respond in that crisis time. And then I'm going to communicate using the tool I have, which is my app. I'm not going to try to fake it, and I now actually have to engage in it. So in 5 minutes, we're covering those steps, covering the plan, covering the tool, and we've not consumed your time for work, your time for teaching, and we've given you all these skills. And the staff love it because when they actually have to physically do the drill then, they get it.
Now,
I've already done it in my mind.
we're kind of close to, unless you live in a cave, you can work one application on your phone. You can make a phone call, right? So this isn't really too big a leap nowadays, is it, for somebody to get to use this?
No, it's particularly for the staff members. The average staff member can use this pretty easily. Administrators, we tell them how to build groups, how to change people on the fly, so they can coordinate. Coordination is always more difficult, but we can train your administrators to be able to coordinate more effectively, and that really is a game changer, we think.
Now,
Well, it sounds like you could almost use it as a regular training program, like where you do your disaster prep and all your rest of it, and
really.
you've got to do that on a monthly basis
Yeah.
anyway.
Or you're doing
I
a
mean,
daily
it's almost
checklist.
like a desktop.
You can set up a checklist for fire extinguishers, for emergency supplies. You can give people on the app responsibilities to check things and put them in the system and update them. And that means they're using it, so they're familiar with it. Now, Miss Eve, you just got out of high school yesterday or something, isn't that true? You're pretty young. So tell us what the best thing you had in your last educational institute that made you feel safe or unsafe. And what is the most anybody did where you went to school last?
Well,
You don't have to burn them and name names, but let's just, tell us.
you know, It's actually been a while since I've been in high school. It's not that long, but it's been a while.
Well,
I
let's
think
put it this way: it's way sooner
I
than
can't
me.
even remember high school.
Yes. So I actually probably graduated a little bit before all these mass shootings started happening.
Okay.
And all I remember, and we discussed this earlier, is hide. And that's such a scary thing, like we mentioned earlier. So I actually don't think I received much information on how to be safe. In fact, they probably put me in more danger
Yeah.
by just telling me to hide under a table all the time.
You're a high user. You like this app?
I do like this, yes.
Yeah. Mr. Jarvis? You're telling me you have 5 minutes. You weren't waving to us saying great show. All right. I got the wrong sign on that. Okay. All right, Jim, let's talk about costs. You don't have to give out quotes if you don't want to, but this does not cost $100,000 like things used to, I assume, right? Is it a license per user kind of fee, or how do you price it?
Yeah, in the school market, we price it based on the size of the population of the students, because that's how they like to buy things.
Okay.
Education, they want to buy it, $1 a student, something like that
Yes,
per year.
Or LA Unified for $10,000 an iPad, I think it was, or something.
Oh, yeah.
The $1 billion purchase.
Yeah, not like that. Very, very affordable. The nice thing about CrisisGo is you can be connected to, if you're a parent, you can be connected to your school and have your app get messaging from the school. Maybe 2 kids, different buildings, etc. So you can be part of that safety network. You can also be part of
Is that a
your city network.
subscription, by the way? Is the parent part of the subscription, or kind of a bonus?
Yeah, actually, parents are included in the subscription that we give for the
good.
school.
Okay.
And also law enforcement. But let's say the city wants to use it. The city can buy it and deploy it for their staff members to respond in all their departments. And then they can provide messaging out to the citizens. And so a parent could not only get messaging from the school, but they could also get messaging from the city.
Oh, so let's take Burbank's Burbank's got 100,000 people, great town.
Yeah.
Manageable, got its own police department, fire. So we could have the city, all city services using this app.
Yes.
And as a citizen of Burbank, I can download it and I can wait for the city to tell me something. Is that
Yep.
the idea? That's a great idea.
Yeah, it is.
And you could
especially
be
in
connected
Earthquake as
to your child's school,
Right.
and you might also use it at your work. But you only have one app. You don't download 3 apps.
Right. So I go from the studio to the house to the grocery store. I'm connected to the city. That's great. And
That's
and
right.
it uses anybody's existing Wi-Fi. Is that how we're powering this thing?
Wi-Fi 3, 4G.
Okay. Excellent.
I have a question, James. Is it possible to have it as an individual? Because let's say, for example,
You want to alert yourself if you're in trouble?
Well, I want to alert my network, because let's say,
Oh, your friend's network, so to speak.
right, or whoever. I need to tell somebody that I'm in trouble, right? So
You
is
could
that
tell Chuck.
somebody needs to know? I'm in
Wouldn't really a
trouble.
lot good, but you could tell him.
So
Yeah,
is-
absolutely. You can download it right now. Go
Okay.
download it. You can build groups, and you can send alarms to groups that are your friends if you get into trouble. You can use a panic button. We actually have, for all parents, what we call the family circle. And so that allows you to connect with your child. Your child's only safe when he gets to school, right? But maybe the most dangerous part of the day is walking to school.
Right.
So he can hit the panic button on his family circle and send that panic to his uncle, his aunt, his mom and dad. And that buzzer could go off on their devices, send a GPS location, let them know that he's in need of support outside of that school safety network.
Excellent. Well,
I've got one big question.
well, make it short because we only got a minute.
Why haven't I heard about this before? I mean,
that's
this
a good question.
This is a good.
Yeah, this is a good one.
It's a good solution.
We developed this for school districts, and we've been focused on delivering the promise and earning that trust. And now that we've done that, we feel like we can keep a lot of other people and other industries safe. But if you ask people in the school industry, they know of us.
Excellent. Jim Spicuzza, CrisisGo. I love it, Jim. It gets the Security Guy Radio stamp of approval.
Yep.
Hey, thanks
Absolutely.
all of you. I
Tell us how we
appreciate
get a hold of
the
you, Jim.
time.
Where do we go to your website to get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, www.crisisgo.com.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Easy.
Eve Serta, Paul Bristow, Mr. Jarvis, Chuck Harold, Security Guy Radio. Thank you for tuning in. You're welcome anytime, Jim, for the latest update. Next shooting comes on, come and give us an update. Cyber Gal, thanks for cybering in again. We appreciate it.
Cheers.
And we'll see everybody next Monday on Security Guy Radio. Be safe.
Thank you.